Today is the third Sunday in Advent, the Sunday which is known as Gaudete Sunday. The word Gaudete, which is the first word in the introit for today, and which occurs also in the epistle, means rejoice. And this is a Sunday on which the church anticipates the great festival of Christmas, which is coming. And therefore the church, instead of using the penitential color of purple, uses this color, which is old rose. Also in Lent, on the fourth Sunday in Lent, the introit begins with the Latin word laetare, which also means rejoice. And on that Sunday, too, the color of old rose is used as the liturgical color of the church. Now, after the 10 minutes after the close of this Mass this morning, I shall go to the room at the back, and I shall hear confessions up until 10 minutes before the second Mass, if any of you wish to come at that time for confession. Now, I always, when I come in, I hear confessions after Mass and benediction on Saturday. But the priest, Father Kelly, will be here next Sunday, and he will announce at what time he will hear, and the other priests will hear confessions when they come in. I come from Toronto into Minneapolis always, and St. Paul, and they come from New York, and the connections are different. So I always get here in time to say Mass on Saturday and have benediction afterwards, and then confessions. But the ones who come from New York arrive much later. Now, next Sunday, which is the fourth Sunday in Advent, and the Sunday before Christmas, there will be Mass, as usual, at 8:30 and again at 10:30. And the system of two Masses now, at 8:30 and 10:30, is a permanent program. The Masses on Christmas will be the midnight Mass on Christmas Eve, and another Mass on Christmas Day at 9:30. So I hope that all of you will publish it abroad to all of your friends and invite them to come to the midnight Mass on Christmas, or the Christmas at 9:30 on Christmas Day. And I hope that all of you will invite your Novus Ordo friends to come along and see the true Mass after all these years that they've been in the desert spiritually, watching that extraordinary service that they now have in the Novus Ordo churches. I don't call it the Mass, but I don't believe it is the Mass. It's a sort of some sort of Protestant service that they have now. Now, this morning, I won't be here at Christmas this year, and this is the last Sunday before Christmas that I'll be here. So I want to preach to you this morning on the message of Christmas, even though normally one doesn't preach on Christmas until Christmas. Now, all of us have engraved indelibly upon our hearts the word Christmas. Christmas is the great festival for families. Easter, of course, is the greatest festival of the Catholic Church. But Christmas is engraved upon all of our hearts. And in addition to being a great festival of our holy faith, Christmas is also a great festival of the family. And our lives on this earth have been punctuated by Christmases. We can all of us look back and we can think, well, now, where was I on the Christmas of 1943, if I was alive at that time? And immediately, by a little calculation, one can recall that Christmas. Or one can say, where was I on Christmas 1968? And by a little calculation, one can recall it. Because Christmas is a sort of a punctuation mark in our lives. And Christmas is always wonderful, always beautiful, always lovely. So many of our memories are Christmas memories. We think back to various Christmases that we've spent, and we can remember who has been there. And sometimes we can remember who has not been there. Christmas is always a sweet memory, but sometimes it is a bittersweet memory, because we remember that somebody who was always there on that Christmas was no longer there. That on that Christmas they were departed this life. So Christmas is lovely. And we all of us enjoy the whole atmosphere that surrounds Christmas. Those few weeks before Christmas, we enjoy going to the shopping malls and seeing busy crowds, buying toys, buying handkerchiefs, buying all sorts of presents. Somehow, goodwill seems to seep through before Christmas. And people who otherwise hardly ever smile begin smiling as the days move toward December the 25th. There's an atmosphere of goodwill that seems to pervade everywhere in these days before Christmas. Unfortunately, Christmas has been very commercialized. I live in Toronto, and it seems to me every year the Santa Claus parade takes place a little bit earlier. This year, the Santa Claus parade took place about the middle of November. Probably next year it'll take place about Halloween. And one wonders if sometime in the future it might start on the 5th of July. Because there's a tremendous desire on the part of all the big stores to commercialize Christmas. And we who are followers of Christ have to resist that. What we have to remember and what we have to recall to all the world is that primarily Christmas is that ever-blessed birthday. That birthday of Him who came out of highest heaven as God's only Son to redeem us from our sins. Christmas is always essentially and totally Bethlehem. Bethlehem. How much we owe to Blessed St. Francis of Assisi, who invented the Christmas crib and made us recall the childlike, beautiful childlike nature of Christmas. The eternal babe of Bethlehem, His holy and immaculate mother, His faithful foster father St. Joseph, the shepherds, the three kings, and even the domestic animals. Christmas, as we celebrate it today, is compounded of many things. Over the centuries, Christmas, like a snowball, has gathered more and more as it comes down the centuries. Some of the things that we do at Christmas time had a pagan origin. Well, we don't mind that so long as it adds to the beauty of Christmas. In the forests of the northern countries of Europe, way back before Christ was born, those old Germanic tribes used to celebrate the winter solstice. That day when, after long months of the days getting shorter and darker, suddenly the day comes when the days start lengthening. And they used to celebrate the return of the light, which came on or about the 21st of December, just after the shortest day of the year, when the light started coming back. And so there in the dark forests of the north, they would put torches on the branches of trees going way up into the heavens. The tallest tree they could find, usually an evergreen tree, a pine tree. And there, in the light and the bonfires around that, the light of the bonfires around that tree, the young men, stripped of all their clothes, would come out and do rhythmic dances. And the whole tribe would celebrate the return of the light. So when those tribes were baptized and became Christian, they carried this lovely custom of the lighted tree into their new faith. And hence we got from that the custom of the Christmas tree, the lighted Christmas tree, which always, especially in our childhood, is inseparable from Christmas. And even those old priests, those Druid priests in the lands of the Celtic twilight, countries like Scotland and Ireland and Wales and Brittany and France, those priests who performed bloodthirsty rites, sometimes even human sacrifice, in the dark forests of those lands, even some of their customs got into Christmas somehow. That little custom of the mistletoe, that came from the Druids, because with the Druids, the mistletoe was something sacred. And so that was incorporated into the celebration of Christmas in those Celtic lands, like Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, and became part of the customs of Christmas. When I was young, there were still some priests and Protestant ministers who, if they saw any boy coming into church with a sprig of mistletoe in his cap, would make him take it out and leave it outside the church. Because they didn't want that plant to come inside the church. Because it was considered, since it was associated with those bloodthirsty rites of the old Druid religion, mistletoe was considered a horrible thing. But with most of us, mistletoe is quite innocuous. We put little sprigs of mistletoe in our houses and follow the custom of anybody who goes under the mistletoe tree is to be kissed. All those little things came into our celebration of Christmas from all sorts of places. In Holland, the celebration of Christmas begins on the 6th of December, because that is the feast of St. Nicholas. And in Dutch towns, I've been there on the feast of St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas, St. Nicholas, makes his entrance into the towns on the 6th of December. And people give each other presents on the 6th of December instead of the 25th. And when St. Nicholas comes in, dressed with his mitre as a bishop, he always has with him another man, a black man, who's known as Zwarte Piet, Black Peter. And he has always in his hand switches for the naughty children. Sinterklaas brings presents for the good children, and Zwarte Piet, Black Piet, brings switches for the bad children. But of course on that day nobody worries about bad children. And then, in the Mediterranean countries, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Christmas is observed, or the present giving is observed on the 6th of January, which is the Epiphany. And in the towns and cities around the Mediterranean, the three kings make their entry on the 6th of January with their crowns, and sometimes, if there's a zoo in the vicinity, riding on rather mangy-looking camels, and they throw sweetmeats and candies out to the children as they go through the towns, and people give each other presents. So all these things have been incorporated into Christmas, and has made it a great family festival as well as a great religious festival. But as I said before, Christmas, for the Roman Catholic, the authentic Roman Catholic, is not a festival just of goodwill. It's not a festival just of the family. It is primarily, always and forever, Bethlehem. The feast, the birthday of Him who is the dearest to our heart, our blessed Lord. Christmas recalls to us that wonderful starlit night. That night of splendor, that night of magic, that night of great majesty. When a little pathetic couple came trudging on that cold night with the winds whistling across the Judean plain, they came into the town of Bethlehem. They had been called there by an edict of a distant emperor in Rome, who had decreed that there would be a census for taxation purposes of all the world. And each man had to report back to the town of his birth and of his family's residence to inscribe his name into the book of the empire. And so on that cold night came into Bethlehem late Joseph, blessed Joseph, and his wife Maria. And Mary was great with child. The hour of her, for the birth of her son, the birth of her child, had come. And so they reported to the local caravanserai. I think when we think of the inn at Bethlehem, we usually think of the sort of inn that we see depicted on Christmas cards, which is usually a very sort of delightful-looking little thatched building, the sort of thing that might have been in some colonial village in Connecticut, or at Valley Forge, or at Williamsburg in Virginia, that sort of inn. We see Mary and Joseph standing placidly at the door, the innkeeper telling them there's no room. But it wasn't like that, really. In eastern towns, there usually is one big inn, which is a caravanserai. And the caravans that come in from the desert stop there. And it's usually a fairly large structure, open almost entirely to the sky, except for the corridors around the four sides. And in those caravanserais, the travelers going across the desert take lodging for the night. There are no beds provided. Each man has his own blankets. He stretches those on the ground. The men sleep out in the middle part, which has no roof over it. They light their fires there, cook their supper, and they talk till the late hours of the night. The women and the children go around the four sides where there is a little sort of roof over them. The women go out and they cook meat for the night, goat meat, or they cook lentils, and they feed their family. And then the women and the children retire to the four sides. The men stay out in the middle, and they visit with each other during the hours of the night until a very late hour. They bring their domestic animals in there, their camels, their donkeys, whatever they have. And the night passes in that fashion. During the night, one hears the domestic animals making noises. The men keep up a low hum of conversation. The children around the sides sleep fitfully, sometimes waking and crying in the night. And that is the way the night is spent in the caravanserai. So Joseph and Mary, coming from distant Galilee, arrived late. They asked if there was any place for them. But because of this great census-taking, the caravanserai was completely filled. And the manager of the caravanserai told them that there was no place. He probably also looked at Mary, and he saw that she was just about ready for the delivery of her child. And he probably did not want the caravanserai disturbed during the night. So Joseph was forced to look elsewhere. In the country around Bethlehem, there are all sorts of caves and grottos in the sides of the hills. And those were used, and are still used, for the lodgment of domestic animals, cows and goats, and so on, sheep. Joseph found one of these, a cold, draughty cave, probably very damp too, and there he took his young wife, and at the midnight hour, there lying on the straw, he gave birth to her son. That is Bethlehem. That is the loveliness and the magic of Bethlehem. The night of stars, the night of great light, the night of deep silence over all the world. And it happened there in that humble grotto, and the world knew nothing about it. Only a few shepherds out in the fields saw angels, and the angels told them to go quickly to Bethlehem, that there a great king was born. And so the shepherds ran, and they came there, and they knew somehow, from knowledge which they had received from on high, that God was there. And there were three mystical figures riding across the desert, across desert sands, following a great light in the heavens. And they too knew that that night something tremendous, something overwhelming had happened. And they too moved toward Bethlehem and toward that cave. But the world in general knew nothing. They went about their business, they went about their occupations, but they knew not that God was there in the midst of them. And that is Bethlehem. That is the eternal message of Bethlehem. And there is nothing in all this world as beautiful as that. Bethlehem. And that is what we observe on this coming festival of Christmas. As I've told you on many occasions, one of the crown events of my life has been 3 months that I spent in the Holy Land some years ago. And one of the things which I shall never forget was the first time I went to Bethlehem. I got into a rickety Arab bus in Jerusalem, and the bus started moving toward Bethlehem. And as I was taking that ride, every Christmas carol that I'd ever known in my life or heard in my life came through my head. Silent Night, Joy to the World, all of them were going through my head. And then suddenly, when the bus rounded a bend, I saw Bethlehem there in front. A white town spread across the barren Judean hills. And the bus drew to a stop in front of the Church of the Holy Nativity. One of the most wonderful churches in all the world. A church which is falling into decay. It's been there for so many centuries. It looks very rickety. It looks as though it might fall down at any moment. But the bus stopped there, and I approached the church with my heart palpitating. I thought, how can I stand this? Coming to the spot where he came, where he was born. To enter the Church of the Holy Nativity is a very remarkable thing, because there's no door. One has to go in through a hole which is only about this high. So in order to get into the church, one has to stoop over like this. The reason for that is that back in the early days of the Mohammedan conquest, in about 600 or 700 AD, the Mohammedan conquerors of Jerusalem and Bethlehem would ride their horses into the church and sometimes harass the people who were worshiping there. So in order to prevent that, the door was sealed up to the church, and only this little sort of hole was left. So in order to get into the church, one has to stoop low. And you know, that rejoiced me to think that. Everybody who goes to that holy spot has to stoop down low in humility. I had made up my mind before I went there that I was going straight to the spot where he was born. I would look at nothing until I got there. I was conscious of going through a row of great pillars going down the church, and I could see at the far end gold in the iconostasis, because it is a Greek Orthodox church. Only the adjoining part, St. Catherine's Church, is allowed for the Roman Catholic use. And there at the far end, near the altar, were some steps going down. I think there were about 20 steps. And I picked up a candle and lighted it before I went down the stairs and carried it down. As I say, my heart was pumping hard. And there at the bottom of the stairs was a white table-type marble altar. And hanging underneath the altar, underneath the table part of it, were about 14 or 15 lamps burning. And on the floor, the marble floor, was a big star about this big of silver. And written on this star of silver were the words, Hic de Maria Virgine, Jesus Christus natus est. Here of the Virgin Mary, Jesus Christ was born. And I knelt down and put my lips, I was alone. There was nobody else in there. I put my lips against the star and held my lips there and kept kissing the spot. And I thought, here is where he came. He came from highest heaven and took human flesh and was born here as a tiny babe on this very spot. And here I am at this spot. Unworthy though I am, here I am. And he came into this world at this spot to save me, to save all of us. He came down in order that we might go up. He became mortal so that we might become immortal. He became man in order that we might be with him forever in heaven. And that is what Christmas means. Christmas is that great movement of God from heaven to earth. God who came down to save us of our sins and to set us on the road that leads back to him in heaven. That is what Christmas means. So let us come on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day and receive him here at this divine altar. Let us receive his sacred body and his sacred blood. And when we meet him here, this altar is just as much Bethlehem as that place where he was born. Bethlehem is wherever he is. And here he is at this altar. This altar is Bethlehem. Father, Son, Holy Ghost.